Hi, I'm Amy Languell from Plum Organics, as Danielle said. I'm very excited to be here today to learn from others in the industry and share some of my own experiences. So Plum Organics is the #1 organic baby food brand, and we're located in Embryville, California. Plum recently launched Blue in the fall of 2015, but that wasn't my first run-in with Blue. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, San Francisco, California, in fact, I worked for another CPG called Premier Nutrition. I'm going to spend the next few minutes telling you about my experience with Blue at both companies, the opportunities, the challenges, and what we learned. Let's start with Premier Nutrition. Premier Nutrition is, as you may have guessed, an active nutrition company. Core products include protein shakes and protein bars, and the largest portion of their business is club. There were 3 main drivers that led to a solution like Blue. The first was the lack of technology. They were still using the manual routing folders, which meant giant printouts of artwork folded up and stuffed into a manila folder, which became paperweights until somebody like me came around to folks' desks to remind them to review it. But then Bob didn't have the folder anymore because he gave it to Larry, who gave it to Dolores, who needed to review it before she went on vacation. There was also no digital asset library, just a disorganized file server, where you hope to find the most recent artwork. The second driver was a lack of process and no process owner. My role was created specifically to solve for this. The third factor was the acquisition of Premier Nutrition by Post Foods, which led to higher scrutiny of the packaging and collateral by Post's regulatory and legal departments, and the need for tighter record keeping. So what did we do about it? The first objective was to get off of the manual routing folders and get on digital proofing. But who sees it first? So we needed to define our workflow, and some of it we got right, but some of it we didn't. So we concurrently decided to test and refine our workflow until eventually we became comfortable with the routing process. Now we were ready to translate it to Blue Enterprise, along with launching the digital asset library. So what did we learn? The first thing that we learned was how to manage third-party spending. Our process incorporated external creative and R&D teams, and we needed to figure out the right times to include them into our process, and how big and how small. We also needed to keep their involvement as minimal as possible. Anytime we involved an external agency like creative or R&D, there was a direct cost associated. In addition to the monetary costs, involving externals like co-manufacturers resulted in costs more around time or process. Another challenge that we faced was copy development. Our copy process was not as mature as it could have been, but when we introduced it as a required reference document into the Blue process, copy as a whole became more accurate and more consistent across the board. The third thing that happened was that we led by example in our process definition. Premier Nutrition knew that there was a need to define process, but our example substantiated that it could be done, and there was a new excitement that sparked that became contagious across the company. So more confessions. Back in 2010, I worked at a private label manufacturer whose second largest customer used Blue. When I announced my move to the Bay Area 2 years later, a printer introduced me to Plum, and then I silently stalked them for my entire stint at Premier Nutrition. So I took a position at Premier, and when I heard that they needed a proofing tool, Blue immediately came to mind. So Blue and I go way back. Fast forward to the 2014 BUC, when I had already completed the Premier Nutrition implementation. I met somebody at Campbell's, and Campbell's had recently acquired Plum, and they knew that they were in desperate need of a system like Blue. Ironically, a position at Plum had just opened that matched my skill set, so enter Plum. The Plum Organics has a highly innovative product portfolio and a very diverse network. There's a large network of co-manufacturers that create a range of products from frozen meatball bites to fruit and veggie purees to our most recently launched organic baby formula. Now, you've seen this before. The business problems were very similar: a lack of technology, a lack of process, and then an acquisition by a giant of a CPG, which was Campbell's Soup Company. Campbell's attraction to Plum was that our innovation was a huge growth driver and it was fully expected to continue. So we needed a process and fast. Our implementation plan was very similar. First, get on digital proofing, define, test, and refine our workflow, and then launch with Blue Enterprise. With most of our teams being internal, we knew that we'd need a lot of buy-in. So how did we do that? We promoted Blue training for weeks with this awesome poster, and then on the day of training, we blared Eye of the Tiger through the conference room speakers and reassured everyone that this training was going to blow their mind. Special thanks to Rich Schmidt for allowing us to borrow his blue bouncing head. Another challenge at Plum was how to incorporate the design process into Blue. Design runs in the veins of Plum, and we didn't want to do anything to lessen the impact that the end consumer saw on shelf. So while we thought that we could digitize parts of the process, we realized that nothing can really replace holding the package in your hands. As I mentioned previously, Plum innovates a wide variety of products and boasts our speed to market. While the packaging process is relatively simple in its 3 phases of design, mechanicals, and proofing, the deliverables that feed into this process are not. Line trials that drive final nutritionals move according to the availability of ingredients and the flexibility in the co-manufacturer's schedule. Brand strategy that drives final copy is often held up by legal and regulatory feedback on how we can actually talk about the product. And packaging trials that drive final die lines are again driven by the availability of materials and line trial timing. So straightforward deliverables become moving targets in our innovation process. We also struggled with external resources. The Campbell's legal, handling, intellectual property, and cooking teams all needed to review our packaging. With internal creative and R&D teams, quite often we're developing the actual product at the same time as we're developing the packaging. So we needed to find a way to encourage healthy conversation outside of the system so that bottlenecks didn't result because of an unexpected comment. So what did we do? We created a dynamic workflow. We allowed ourselves the flexibility to bypass certain reviewers when they weren't needed. For example, we could upload artwork with preliminary nutritionals and romance copy so that legal, regulatory, and the brand team could duke it out before we sent the final rounds to the rest of the team. We could kick back artwork to just our packaging engineer when we have a die line change. So we've created a workflow that still allows for success with even the tightest timelines and unexpected circumstances. With that, we've cut down our review time from 12 days to 7 days. Each team member actually gets twice the amount of time to review now that reviews are happening concurrently. And we have a 68% reduction in time spent distributing assets internally and externally. No one has to wonder how the asset magically appeared because now there's a project to trace it back to. So what sticks out to me the most in all of this? The huge benefit of getting on digital proofing ASAP. So please throw your manual routing folders away tomorrow. At both companies, we were able to take the time needed to develop a successful workflow while still benefiting from the online proofing tool. Understanding who to involve, when, and at what level created an efficient and effective workflow. Building in the flexibility to choose our own adventure while innovating our products allowed us to adapt to the only constant in our industry, which is change. Speaking of change, I've been asked to highlight a few things that I'd like to see from Blue in the future. I'd love to see continued improvements in the user interface. Very excited to see today's demos. And I'm also excited to see improvements to the DAO, such as mass uploading and tagging of assets. It's been a fun and challenging journey, and I've learned so much. Thanks to everybody for listening, and I hope that something I've said resonates with all of you.